All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Saturday. Oh, wait a second. It's not Saturday as normal. This is Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. This is the last night, sad face, of the library's summer author series. And again, I know it's a little bit different this year. We're not in the Hazel B. Hayes auditorium. You're not all in front of me, all millions of you. But we're doing what we can here because there is a pandemic, if you haven't noticed. And I hope all of you out there are staying safe and following whatever guidelines have been set for you, because it's definitely not over, and we definitely want to keep our people safe. This is The Raven. I'm Jason Lavelle. I'm so happy to be here tonight, and I'm so grateful to the Herrick District Library for making it possible to do these shows in any way, in any way, shape, or form that we could, especially now that everything had to change for COVID-19. I do want to thank the show's sponsors, Go Indie Now, which is a Facebook and YouTube platform that promotes indie authors around the world of all shapes and sizes. They are a really, really great show. You can check them out at goindienow.com. Find them on Facebook or YouTube. And remember, it's always time to go indie now. And also author Rebecca Jonesy, who's a good friend of mine and a great advocate for human rights, which I especially appreciate. And my favorite of her series is the Mabs Doll books, where the Fae know that everyone is unique and all love is valid. All right, now after that very rocky introduction there, I've got to get back into professional mode here. I have a absolutely fabulous author with us tonight, and I've read several of her books. I am a huge fan. The great and the one and only Ellen Hopkins. Ellen, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here talking to you guys instead of washing dishes or whatever I could be doing instead. I've washed a lot of dishes in the last few months. I got to tell you what.
Well,
I did the
thankfully.
whole sourdough thing, you know. It's like,
Oh, how did it turn out? Did it turn out well for you?
oh yeah, well I'm a pretty good cook anyway, but so every day it was like some kind of sourdough stuff. And finally one day I'm like, I am so sick of sourdough. Bye. So, but yeah.
My wife bought a bread maker this year, and she, for about a month, was just making all sorts of really wild creative breads, and it was super fun. But I think she just got to a point where she was like, okay, I'm kind of tired of bread now. Everybody's eating way too many carbs, and we've gained weight. But
Yeah, let's
you
do the keto thing for a day or two.
all right, we're gonna eat nothing but burgers or bacon for a few months. But yeah, that's the quarantine life. Yeah, it really is. You're inside, you're trying to keep busy, you're eating more than you should. I know you're out west, right?
Yeah, we're in northern Nevada, so it's the Sierra foothills,
Okay.
between Reno and Carson City, but about 5,500 feet elevation, so it's a little bit more weather. It's
Okay.
nice. It's nice.
Okay. And does the higher elevation, does that equal some lower temperatures for you than the kind of the basin areas, or?
Yeah, we're about 7 or 8 degrees cooler than either of those two places. So,
Okay.
and we get more snow in the winter, and they get more rain. So it's about 1,300 feet difference in elevation.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a good friend that lives in Las Vegas who said that you can hardly go outside the house lately because you'll
Las
melt.
Vegas, no. But Las Vegas to Reno is like 500 miles, and it's like it's different. It's way different.
Well, if you don't live in Nevada, I think that most of us don't realize the distances there. Just like
It's
someone
a
that's not.
huge, it's
It's
a huge state,
Yeah,
huge state.
it's giant.
It's a 9 hour drive, 45 minutes by plane, but 9 hours in a
Mhm.
car.
Well, and it's gorgeous. When the last time we went out to Vegas, I think that one of the things that shocked us the most was how much incredible hiking there was available, right, even in surrounding the city. It's amazing, and that's what we love. We weren't that big into getting around the casinos and the people, but holy smokes, there's some gorgeous trails through the canyons and the mountains up there. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's pretty there, but it's prettier here by far because I mean
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's the Sierra, so, and like where I go out in the morning, we have a state park with not a lot of people, so I can take my dog out in the morning without, without worrying about social distancing, anything but rabbits or wild horses. But it's really beautiful here. It's, we're a half hour to Tahoe skiing, so that's
Oh,
where we
wow.
are.
That's incredible. Boy. Oh, well, that's going to have to go on my destination list for places to go for a retreat to relax.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So tell us a little bit about what you write, because you have a huge catalog of books. Can you, I guess it's tough to bottle that into to a summary, but
Right. So I'll roll back just a little bit. So my way into writing fiction, it all started way back. I was a freelance journalist for a number of years. And from there, I moved into children's nonfiction because some of the stories I wrote just seemed to me like they would make great kids' nonfiction books. So before I started publishing anything fiction-wise, I published 20 nonfiction books for kids. So history, science, biographies, that kind of stuff. And I was raising little kids at the time, and and they got to be bigger kids, and they got to have bigger kids' problems. And so I thought I would write picture books when they were little, but that's not my skill set. Like entire story arcs in 500 words, they ain't happening here. So, but I was also writing poetry all those years, like with the poetry group in Carson City, writing poetry, just writing. And then what happened was my teenage daughter fell into meth addiction. And so we fought that addiction with her for a number of years. She ended up going to prison. And when she went to prison, like I had to make some kind of sense and to what happened to my kid, how was I responsible? Was I responsible? Whatever. And so I decided I needed to write a book for teens because I wanted to show this path to addiction and how fast it could happen to a teenager. And I wanted to write first person from her point of view. And when I started the book in prose, it was my voice and it was not hers. It was angry, it was just not right. And I put the book away and I did a workshop with Sonia Sones, who's another verse novelist. So what I do is I write novels in verse. And her first verse novel had just come out. It was called Stop Pretending. It was a story about her sister falling into schizophrenia. So based on a real story, fictionalized in verse. And I came home and I'm like, I'm writing this sucker in verse. And so I started writing it in verse and it all clicked into place. So that book is called Crank. It came out in October of 2004. Since then, I have published 14 young adult novels, most in verse. Some are kind of hybrid, prose and verse. 4 novels for adults, 2 in verse, 2 in prose. And I just have a novel for middle grade readers coming out in October as well. So I'm moving into yet another new space, which is really fun. But yeah, so most of those teen novels are they're contemporary issue-based teen novels. So they touch on teen suicide, they touch on gun violence, they touch on teen prostitution. So they're hard reads, but these are issues that affect teenagers every single day in this country, like in every town, in the backseat of every car or whatever, So and I made it my goal to write about these issues as honestly as possible. So I don't tiptoe around what I'm writing about. I don't worry. I use the language teens use, which isn't always good. Shh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have 3 teens myself. So
But these were stories that I really thought needed to be told. So when I first got here in 2004, there were some writers writing for teens on the contemporary level, but most of what was being published right then was fantasy. It was the big books then were the Twilight books. So, those black book covers that you saw everywhere you went. It's like, I am not going to write sparkly vampires. Okay, I'm going to write stories that matter on some level. And so that was kind of how I got into doing what I do.
Awesome. Well, and I have a lot of questions about your books and about your fiction, but I think I'd like to kind of start this off if possible, with maybe a little reading from one of your books. Would that be all right with you?
I can do that.
Wonderful.
This is People Kill People. It does address gun violence, obviously. This book, so moving forward through my career, I just, you kind of want to experiment with things. So this book has 6 characters, all of whom have a reason to pick up a gun. Teenage characters, all of whom have a reason to pick up a gun and use it. Those sections are all written in second person prose. So inviting you onto the page as the reader to become those people. But there's also an omniscient thread in verse that is the voice of violence speaking to them, because we all have this little voice inside our head. When you get mad at your husband and you're like thinking about throwing something and you're deciding whether you ought to do that or not. Yeah, I have it too. So this is just a little piece. I'll read a few poems here from the voice of violence. Like dawn and dusk, existence and demise are inextricably linked, as per the grand scheme, either drafted by some all-powerful architect or randomly designed. Perhaps this is the true knowledge of Eden, not the mechanics of procreation, but the promise that one's time on earth is nothing more than a journey toward inevitable departure. Surely the ancient ones who bore witness to birth in the wilds and death from claw or club or predation by creatures too small for the eye to identify were aware of nature's plot. As their spines uncurled and they drew upright to run, discovered the value of flint, the power of spear and arrow, the lust for blood billowed like a black-bellied cloud. Oh, to wield a weapon mercilessly, extinguish a beating heart. The millennia crept forward, dawn to dusk, to dawn to dusk, and humankind shed its fur, fashioned clothes, deserted its caves in favor of villages, cities. But even as people learned to plant, harness sunlight and rain to nurture garden, fields, their passion for the hunt remained. They killed in the name of survival, protection, vengeance. They killed in response to lust, jealousy, despair. They killed for the thrill of the simple pleasure of witnessing bloodshed. Think for one delicious moment how they would have watched in wide-eyed reverence the advent of gunpowder, marveled at the fire lance, its relentless evolution from crude spear-driven flamethrower into a fierce weapon able to discharge 1,000 flesh-ripping metal projectiles in 60 lethal seconds. Ponder their amazement at a machine with the ability to level entire villages, infant to ancient, in mere minutes. They would have fallen on their knees and lifted their arms in worship. Now you understand the talent of a firearm, but perhaps you're unaware of the force fueling its seductiveness.
Wow. That's not just light reading.
No.
No, not at all. Um, so okay, so this kind of leads right into some of the stuff that I wanted to talk to you about, because you can't really read an Ellen Hopkins without really diving into some serious issues and some sensitive topics. Um, and you choose a lot of sensitive topics. What was it, do you think, that led you down that path? And I mean, it's almost like an advocacy kind of thing, this bringing these things to light. Was it with Crank and your daughter, or?
that that was that was the initial kick, but it was the relationship I developed with my readers after that. So because like in those years that have passed, I have literally tens of thousands of emails and messages and, from all these different, when I first got here, it was just MySpace, by the way. There was no Facebook. It was MySpace. And I had developed a real relationship with my readers through allowing them to back and forth message with me. And so then they started sharing their stories with me. So I was hearing real-time stories from real teens, from real young people about what's going on in their life, that's getting to them, or that they thought were important, that I should be talking about.
That's the Zoom life right there.
Okay, I forgot the phone. Hang on. There. Go away. I don't want
Uh,
to. I'm talking to them. That's going to be a political call, by the way, because that's all what those are. But no, developing a relationship with those teens it's what built my career, but it's also what inspired other books. And what gave me what I needed to keep writing for them, what they needed for me to keep writing for them. And listening to their needs was more important than me writing what I wanted to write all the time.
Now, when you're okay, so Crank, I know a little bit of the backstory, and you explained a little bit of the backstory behind that already. Now, these other topics, like the people kill people, where you're going to be talking about violence and gun violence, um, do you? Are you always the one that's picking these topics, or are you hearing from some of these people that write into you, hey, this is something really meaningful to me? How do you choose what you want to tackle next?
If I get the same topic idea from more than one reader, especially if there's several, then I know it's something I need to look at for sure.
Okay.
Other times, like Impulse is about three young people whose lives connect in a psych hospital after separate attempted suicides, right? I chose teen suicide because I had a very good friend who lost a son to suicide at 16 years old. So then I need to know the why. Kids are the future. What makes them give up on life at 16 years old? That was for me. I needed to know the answer to that. And I think we talk about that a lot. Asking why or what if is the thing for me. I like why, because I want to know why. I need to understand what drives people. And maybe that's just a writer's interest. I don't know, but I might have been a psychologist in another lifetime. I don't know, but I think delving into people's minds is like so interesting. That's what all my books are, obviously very character driven, even though I touch on kind of hard topics. You have to love the characters, or what's the point?
Yeah. Well, and I think that the way you're doing this, where you're using your story, and your kids, or other people's kids that or and people that you've heard from and heard their stories. I think that um, I may be crazy for thinking this, but I always feel like that gives the story a little bit more heart, and somehow makes it more relatable to people if you've either experienced it or have really felt those emotions. If your friend, who you said had experienced the loss of her child, if you're feeling that love and that loss with your friend, I feel like that gives you more that you can write and more that you can put on the page that readers can connect with.
Yeah.
And that's just me, I think. But
No, I think absolutely. I love, for me, all the pre-write is creating those characters. Like, I'm not, how they say there are pantsers and there are like, plotters. I call plotters architects, like they have to have everything in order. And then pantsers are like me, I'm a gardener. So for me, creating the characters first so that I really know who they are, and who the people on the side of them, or what the person over there that's looking at them, I need to know who those people are, because plot for me needs to flow from character. When I get in trouble is when I try to force my characters into like this space and they're going, I would never do that. It's like, fine, just tell me, you talk to me then. So I just channel them and I let them write their stories through me.
Well, in the first, or it wasn't the first. Crank was the first book of yours that I read, and then not long after that, I read Identical, and I listened to it on audiobook, and the narrator was phenomenal, which probably made it a lot worse for me, because that is a heck of a story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Um, so intense. And it almost made my skin crawl
right.
listening to some of the things that were in there, talking about, again, loss and abuse and sexual abuse and things that need to be talked about, but are so uncomfortable to hear about.
Right.
Um, but
And
but yeah, it was just that you elicited that kind of reaction from me that I was like, whoa, that's good stuff right there. I mean,
and that book is dedicated to three friends, and that was their childhood, and they all came to me separately and asked me to write that story because they're like, nobody talks about this. And the truth is, like, my generation, we were told to shut up. So the book, for those of you who don't know, Identical, is about twins whose father's molesting one of them, whose father. Um, it's hard to talk about, but it happens way too much. And in fact, I found out about a fourth one not long after that book came out because she came to me and told me that. And I don't tiptoe around it. and I'm glad I didn't. Like, I heard from one reader, and she said, I'm glad you didn't shut the door. So you go into the bedroom with them. I'm glad you didn't shut the door, because when you shut the door, people assume nothing actually happens behind there. And that was from somebody who experienced that for 6 years of her life. So I didn't want to shut the door. I want to shine the light on, and I want to encourage people who might be experiencing that to step forward and say something sooner rather than later, because we were told to shut up. My generation, don't talk about this stuff. And so many of us were damaged or hurt as young people, and now we need to encourage them to speak up, to say something now.
yeah. Well, and that the whole time listening to that book, and it's it's a longer book, and so I'm listening to it at work and at times that are appropriate for that, and the whole time I'm screaming in my head, no, say something right now, say something. This can't happen. And it's but man, just the fear and the torment that they were going through, having to deal with it. I mean, it was heartbreaking. It really was. And do you? No, obviously you do, because you said you have people write in, but do you find that people who have experienced these kind of traumas are able to read these books and glean something from them, or are they too hard to read? Is it too close for them?
It depends on where they're at in their journey often. Um, and sometimes they have to stop and they go back and read later. But either way, it lets them know that somebody is thinking about them and believes them. Obviously, I believe that this is happening, or I wouldn't have written the book, right? So at least they know that they're not going to be pushed aside or perfect. I see the cat is not going to get pushed aside either.
She will not be pushed aside.
That's awesome. But no, I think sometimes, and they can be triggering, they can, but there are also readers that want them, that need them, that want, because it kind of opens a door for them to tell their own stories then, do you know what I mean? It opens a door.
Yeah.
Speaking of doors.
Yeah. Well, kind of an invitation to start that dialogue with somebody.
Yeah.
Um, well,
And I always give resources too in the back of my books,
yeah.
and the author notes. I will always give resources for where you can find help for whatever we're talking about. You know, phone numbers if you need them. And my email. You can get a hold of me if you need to.
Well, and I think that aside from raising awareness for some of these horrible issues, that just the simple act of providing representation for the people that are going through them is very important, because most teenagers aren't going to read a mass market paperback that's featuring someone that's going through this type of crisis, this real life crisis. And so when they can see other people like them, even if even if a book isn't going to heal you, it's not going to fix things. But if you can see that, okay, this is a real thing, it's not just me, maybe
Right,
that makes it a little bit easier to reach out to someone too, or at least you hope.
right. And a really good librarian, a really good teacher, they keep my books in their classrooms, and they know who to hand them to. It's interesting. It's this very it's a more than a partnership. It's a small community. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
we know who needs the help, and I so much praise for librarians and teachers who are willing to take the risk. It's funny because my books have been challenged quite a bit over the years. But when I was, there's kind of the older generation of librarians are retiring and moving on. The ones that feel more like they need, and I like to call librarians and teachers not gatekeepers, because the gatekeepers are the ones that are retiring. Gate openers. You guys are opening gates. You guys are allowing these kids that need these books to have them. Sometimes they even sneak them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, well, there's so much heaviness, and now I'm thinking of all these poor kids or abused people that may be stuck at home with abusers right now, and it's just boy, it really is a lot. It
Yeah,
is.
it's been a tough time period. And I know for them, for some of them, it's been hard for sure.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
which also complicates this idea of going back to school, because some of those kids need to get out of their homes, and how do we do that safely? I don't know. I don't have any answers. I wish I did.
yeah. Yeah. You're more bringing light to the issues, which is still extremely important. And oh man, speaking of hard issues, we've been watching all sorts of documentaries now that we've had months and months to binge on television. And one of them that we watched recently was it was the life of Gabriel something. I can't remember his last name. Is a young boy, and I think it was out in California, whose foster parents or adoptive parents ended up killing him after abusing him for a long time. And um, just absolutely, I mean, horrific. I was almost ill every time an episode ended, but I had no idea of some of the issues these kids are going through, that are in the foster system, and working with social workers in a system that is far overburdened. And it kind of opened my eyes to some of these tragedies that are probably happening every day. And I was like, wow, and these are people that we're trusting to take care of our children. So yes, if you want a good disturbing watch, it's a Facebook original, or excuse me, a Netflix original, The Life of Gabriel
You
something. And
too can be disturbed.
yes, if you'd like to be disturbed after reading your Ellen Hopkins book, watch this, and that should just complete your night.
Actually, I'm revising another YA now. I don't know when that'll be out. It's like this horrible revision that's been forever. But the next YA after that one, I want to actually explore the foster system, because we worked a lot with some aged out foster kids for a while, that we worked to get them off the street and into college. And it's very, very difficult for somebody who's been pushed aside for years and years and years to accept help. And so I really want to explore that in a YA. So that'll be out someday for sure.
Okay. Well, and speaking of television or video, I know before the show began, you were talking about how Crank was actually going to be in production as a movie, right?
Right. Yes, it's in production, and the script is done. By the way, and I have an executive producer credit. I got script approval. I have cast approval. I have all that stuff. So, but they were supposed to start filming at end of summer, and now, because Hollywood is not filming right now, but hopefully they'll be doing that. And they're going to film some of it here in Nevada, where it's set, which is even better, because Nevada now has movie tax stuff, whatever they look for to be able to do films there. So, and I'm really excited about it. The script is great. It's really good.
Well, and I was going to ask, and that's amazing that you were able to give your approval and look over the script and have a little bit of say so there. But how, because the book is very, very intense. You know, do you feel like the movie is going to be able to capture that same intensity?
I do. The script, the director, who's Maddie Deutsch, which probably the name doesn't mean anything, but she's Leah Thompson's daughter. So they're like, it's like a whole Hollywood family that's involved in this. And it was her little sister who loved the book, and she wanted to do the movie. And so then Maddie wrote the script, and we went through a couple of changes, but for the most part, she really, it doesn't follow it exactly because, movies have to move a little faster or whatever, but it's very close, very close. And some of the structuring of it is so good, and she actually used some of the words out of the book that made sense in those places. And so it's like, it's very, I can't wait to go to the premiere. That's
Well, I gotta tell you, I would be over the moon going into that premiere. I mean, I would be completely dolled up. I would be like, yes, I wrote this. This is
that dress
my.
I bought like 10 years ago for the award I never got.
Oh man, well, hopefully they'll be able to begin production in 2021. I'm just pretending this year is just completely off the calendar. 2020 just not going to exist at all anymore.
Yeah, we thought 19 was bad. It's like, what?
Oh, well, I honestly, in 2016, the end of 2016, I didn't think life could get any worse. I was traumatized, but then it's just like, holy crap,
I know. It's like,
year after year.
they say God doesn't give you more than you can handle. It's like, could you just lighten up a little?
Right. Do I have to handle it all right this second? Really? I mean, do you remember when Tiger King was the big thing? I mean, come on, bring back that stupid thing.
No.
But, well, I, and this is a little bit darker topic. I'd like to talk to you about writing in dark spaces. And for anyone watching or listening, I don't mean in a darkened room, although that would be very creepy and bad for your eyes. You don't want to do that actually. But because I write horror and paranormal stuff, so I spend some time in kind of dark headspaces, and it affects me. And your books are much more intense, much more realistic. You're dealing with real world issues. What is it like to kind of inhabit this place that could be filled with a really negative energy? How do you get through that?
I don't write late at night. I write early in the morning. um, you have to power through the tough stuff, and remember that there's light at the end of all of them, and there's light filtered through. I try to filter light all the way through those dark spaces. You might not even notice it so much when you read it on the first read, but if you go back and reread, you will find those spaces. Appropriate, where humor is appropriate. Try to put humor in, even if it's dark humor. Give a glimmer of hope. Make a kiss like the best kiss ever. You know what I mean? Something that kind of mitigates the hurt and the pain. And we all go through hurt and pain, at some point, and most of us get to have that kiss once in a while, at least once in a while. So just to remember that it's not all dark, even when you're mired in like the worst of it, there's love there available somewhere, like with Crystal's, so my daughter Crystal, which I did not mean to give her a name that seemed to take her through life or whatever. um, what she gave us through that, we took custody of her first baby. Oh, by the way, there are 3 books. So there's a sequel where she moves from street meth to glass to crystal, and then there's a book that from the points of view of her 3 oldest children who've lost their mom. So we move into a different headspace here, trying to look at how the family processes what's happening over here. But she gifted us in a way, depending on the day, with children that she could not take care of herself. So we adopted her first baby, who is going to be 24, and Lordy, he's something. Yeah,
Wait, 24 already?
he'll be 24 in December. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I know. And but he was this little ray of light through the whole thing. So even for parents who are hurting in some space, they have little rays of light. And if you can remember that and include those in those spaces, or at least focus on those from time to time, it's really helpful to do that. Otherwise, what's the point? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like,
And by the way, the end part of that story is, so she's been in and out of that addiction since before he was born, so 26 years. So, periods of sobriety, periods of terrible relapse, sobriety, relapse. Throughout those years, she had 7 kids with 7 different dads. The meth use affected some of them very negatively. Some of them it skipped because she was clean in those time periods. So, so we have, the last relapse was 7 years ago, and we took custody of 3 kids then. So they came to us at 3, 4, and 9, and we've had them for 7 years. The 9-year-old came to us with like severe PTSD, I mean, horrible trauma, early childhood trauma, and he's a difficult child. But we have worked through a lot of really bad stuff with him, and he's come out the other side, and he's doing pretty well, which is what my middle grade, which I'm just going to toss the cover up real quick. This is a tribute to him, because this boy comes to live with his extended family because his mom has died, his dad's in jail, and he comes with problems. And families, when a child like that is dumped into a new space in the middle of a family with different expectations and whatever, it's a rough ride for a long time. But there is, on the other end, like now he's succeeding in so many ways, and he doesn't have all the issues, through counseling and therapy and whatever that have helped him. But it's hard to lose that stigma, when you go to a new school and you look like the freak kid over there. It's hard to lose that stigma all the way into high school. It will follow you. So this book is a tribute to him. And I really, a lot of readers will, even if they don't normally read middle grade books, because I think it's a powerful story for adults and for younger kids, and also for teenagers to read. But then we have the 11-year-old, and he's like, everybody loves Caleb. He's like, so his older brother does not love Caleb. Teachers are like, he's such a pleasure. I love him. He's so easy. And the troubled kid is like, I hate you. But we are a family, and we didn't mean to be this family, but this is what happened, and we're making the best of it by God. Even with distance learning, I'm teaching kids. Yikes. That's why I said I love teachers. You guys are awesome.
They are teachers. Oh boy. I mean, I could go on about teachers for a long time. My mom was a teacher, all my childhood and growing up. But, and I think, that kind of the vein that runs through your books and what you were just saying is not only that, kind of that ray of light, that single light that's shining through. It's that hope. And I have a very good friend who's a great horror author. His name is Michael Brent Collings, and he did a whole essay on why hope is so important in these dark pieces of fiction. And I still don't understand all of it. But it really makes sense, because even when you're experiencing these horrible things, if you don't give your readers or yourself that little bit of hope that there could be something better around the next bend, you're gonna sink into those swamps of despair, and you won't be able to pull yourself out. But so it's that hope, I think, that's gotta drive us, that there could be a better answer.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually thought I was going to be the next Stephen King, but that didn't turn out.
Well, I think you've done pretty well for yourself. I mean, you are a darn big name in fiction, and I'll tell you what, we've already got a Stephen King. We don't need another one. We needed an Ellen Hopkins, you know?
I know that's what I know.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We
But
always
no, I mean, and I used to write a lot of short horror, and I have a few out in some anthologies and stuff, and it's fun to move into that kind of, weird. Mine are more Twilight Zoney than slasher stuff, but I like to move into that space sometimes, just to, because that helps you crawl out of like the real life horror stuff, like when you're way off the deep end that way. So
well, in when you're writing these books, oh, okay, so you've written the books, they're off to the readers. What are what are you hoping for? Because obviously you're educating a little bit with these, but are you hoping for entertainment, or are you hoping that it really hits them somewhere deeper?
Oh, well, they have to be some entertaining, or a lot of kids just put them down, So there is romance, that, because, and again, that's that space when you're a teenager you need, and it's all different kinds of romance. So I write LGBT stuff too, but we need that. That's the basis of all of human beings, is that everybody wants to love and to be loved, right? It's pretty simple. So if you can find even just that space there, inside there, I think it's really important. So for the kids who are going through them, I want them to know that there's a way out, that there's help, that there's hope. For the kids that aren't those kids, I want them to take a look at the kid in the corner, the freak in the corner, and ask themselves why. What's going on in that person's life that makes them be that way? Instead of just like automatically going, I don't want anything to do with that kid. That kid's a freak. Why? To develop some compassion, because when you can see that there are reasons for young people, for people doing the things they do, it gives you, I hope, a little bit of compassion for them, insight into what's happening, compassion for their space, So
Yeah.
there's that. I want I want readers to love my characters. It's the character building, like I said, that it takes me all the time. I create them, and I come to love them, even the ones that I don't love, the villains. You have to love them a little bit too. You have
Yeah.
to have some kind of understanding of who they are, because nobody is all bad or all good. We're shades of whatever. I don't like to use the title of the book, but we are shades of purple or whatever we are. I don't know.
Well, um, well, that's good. I like that, and like I said, I had no idea what to expect when I actually took your first book. My friend Jen had given it to me, and it was just big old fat thing, Crank. I was like, oh my gosh, how this is going to take me 2 months to get through this. And I lay down on my hammock, and 2 days later, I was like, oh well, that was a major experience, and I felt like I learned something from it. I felt like I learned a lot about it. I was like, okay, I have a little bit more awareness now of a topic that I didn't before, and I think that's a great thing to achieve. And another good friend of mine had told me once that they felt like we don't need more acceptance, we need more understanding. And I do think we need more acceptance for many, many things, but I think that understanding is going to be more helpful for the most part. So like you said, looking at the kid in the corner who might be the weird kid in class, and trying to find out, well, what is different about this kid? What are they going through, and how can I try to better that person's life? Um, but I
Like
think,
some of those messages I've gotten are actually from people, like many, who have decided after reading my books they want to help people. So they've gone into their psychologists or their social workers, or they've moved into drug counseling or whatever, and because they want to help people. And I do think we right now it's hard to believe that people want to help people. you know what about that mask thing going
uh-huh,
on? It's like,
uh-huh.
really?
I can't breathe.
But it's like, overall, I think people want to be kind and want to be helpful to other people. I think right now this political space is so polarized, and it's being driven by greed and power, and money. And it's not us doing that. It's the people up here running the show, you know what I mean? And so and they've been pretty successful with it in the last few years, like really successful. And I truly, truly hope that we can find a way to get back to, we don't have to agree with each other on everything, but we should be able to discuss it without, name calling or, unfriending or, cuss words or whatever, because it doesn't need to be that way. Let me understand why you think that way. You understand why I think this way. And I've managed to open up discussion. Twitter's a hard space to do that.
Oh,
I managed to open up a few spaces.
yeah.
It's a mean space. It
It
really
is.
is.
Twitter
But
is the Wild West. Um, don't go on Twitter. It's
but I
nasty on there.
but I'm there all the time, and I'm on Twitter because it's where we can get news fast. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
a fast news cycle. So that's what, but I don't want to stay there. I just want to go in there, see what's going on. And sometimes I'm like, why did I want to know what's going on?
Yeah. Well, and I'm only on Twitter really because I host another podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQ community, and on Twitter there's a huge LGBTQ community, and they're very, very vocal, and so it's a great way to interact with people. But it's also, the whole cancel culture is huge on Twitter, and they are vicious. So be careful if you wander into Twitter land.
Yeah,
Um,
wander in there, keep your mouth shut, just observe.
Yep, just watch, just watch.
Which is
Um,
why I really shouldn't go there after a couple glasses of wine. It's harder to
uh,
do
well,
that.
it's dangerous, and before I ever post anything anywhere, I'm like, okay, who am I going to get attacked by for saying this? But I've come to a place in my life now where, and you were just talking about being able to have discussions with people, and I'm halfway there because I am all about human rights and equality, and so when that becomes debated, it's like that's when the conversation shuts down for me, and I'm like, nope, because I'm not going to bend on this. I'm really not. So it can be tough. It's tough to make friends out there right now. That's for sure. But I think that Abby, our facilitator with the Herrick District Library and the wonderful lady who set all this up for us, had a question for you on about your writing, and specifically about the form of your writing. Are you there, Abby? Let's see if she's paying attention.
I'm here. I just thought I could use the space bar to unmute myself. It's amazing. All this time, I still don't get how Zoom works. Okay, so I was telling you earlier about how Identical was my first introduction to your work. And when I finally got to the point where I realized what you were doing and how you were using the form almost as a whole other tool to explain to us what was going on, my mind was just blown. I was blown out of the water, just kablooey, like the whole thing, the head exploding. And I was wondering how the form and the function, how they come together for you. Did you know that that was how you were going to write this story before you started? Did you realize that you could utilize the form as a piece? How did that work?
Yeah, and I write, first of all, I do everything myself in Word, all the formatting I do myself. And it's become instinctive. So it was more work with the first couple books, probably. Crank was a wild experiment in form for sure. But it became, I have an eye, I guess, now for word placement, and it took practice to do that. But I do it all as I go, so I don't like write the story and then go back and figure out the form. I do it page by page by page, and it's fun. It's wordplay, but it's also, there's a visual part of it that I want to be there, because a lot of young readers are they they're visual thinkers more, you know, because they're on screens more, right? So they want to see this kind of more visual excitement, I guess, than like paragraphs of text. So the verse works so well, and I don't know, I guess I just have a talent for it. You know, not everybody does. And because I work with writers too, and I have suggested to writers who have done a project in verse, maybe you should try it in prose, you know, because it's not everybody can, or should do it, but you should all try it if you want to.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and that was of course the first thing I saw when I opened Crank. It was the verse, and I was like, wow, this is different. But somehow it actually propelled the story even faster, which was pretty phenomenal. So we have my good friend Jennifer Rose here, who is actually the one who introduced me to you in your fiction, and so I'm very grateful for her for that. And you know,
Me
she was going
too.
to be she was going to be coming to see you live at the library, but of course, you know, pandemic happened, and so we're here. But she does have a couple of questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right.
So one question that I have, so addiction is a huge part of my life, unfortunately, personally and with other people. And that's one of the reasons why I think I relate so much to the books. And so sobriety means a lot to me. And I heard you mention that the last relapse of your daughter was 7 years ago. And so I'm just curious how she's doing and if she was able to beat this and stay sober and kind of what it's looking like.
So it was after we took, and when we pulled the kids out, it was really bad. I mean, they hadn't seen their mom in 3 weeks. They were in a seedy hotel room in Vegas with the new boyfriend's brother who was fresh out of prison. I mean, and it was a horrific situation. She ended up going to jail. She was pregnant. So she ended up going to jail a few months after that. She had that baby in jail. That baby was taken away, put into foster. And I think at that point, she decided she wanted to try to be a good mom to at least one of her kids. So she, as far as I can tell, she's been clean. There was, from meth, I'll put it that way. So I don't think she's totally sober, but I think she's not using meth. I just saw her, I just did a video chat with her, and I'll just say she's plumped up a tad. So she doesn't look like she's using meth at all. And she's solid. She's kept the same job for a few years. So, you know, I think she's all right. I don't think she's going to go back into the hellhole, you know. I think she's hanging in.
That's good.
How does she feel about being the subject of some of your books?
Well, like I said, when I first started the book, she had just gone to prison. She wasn't all that happy about it, but it took her 18 months in prison. That's where that addiction was, to come all the way clean and to kind of get her headspace back. And by the time the book came out and she could see how it was doing good in the world, so the sequel is Glass. She actually gave me more stories for that book. She gave me none from Crank. That was my observation, friends, sister, etc. But she gave me stories that are in Glass, because she wanted to make some kind of amends, I think. She's good with the movie. She's, you know, so she signed off that she's good with the movie, which we needed to do. But she's all right with it. I think, you know, we all make mistakes, and sometimes our mistakes are really huge. And she made some huge, huge mistakes, and I'm sure she's sorry about them. I'm sure she's sorry about losing her kids. She can't take care of them, though. I mean, you know, 7's, forget it. But, and you know, and again, one we lost. The first one's okay. The second one, there was severe learning disabilities because she was using heavily in utero. The third one, she was clean for, and that girl, she's got scholarship offers from, you know, all over the country, you know, so she's fine. And then the next one we had problems with, and then, you know, so we're raising them all individually, trying to help give them the help they need where they need it. But I do think she's sorry that, I think she wished she would have been a better mother. That's what I think.
That's understandable. So you talked about the 3 series, Crank, Glass, and Fallout. Do you think there will ever be a 4th one to that series, whether it's now or 5 years from now?
I, I would not say no. I'm thinking that probably the 4th one to that series will be a memoir, which I'm inverse trying to get to. Like, I've been trying to think about it because people have been asking me for a memoir for a long time, and I'm trying to figure out how to frame it, like what I don't want to lie about.
You have a title for that now, right? I'm Not the Bad Guy?
Yeah. That's because yesterday or whatever, I'm like, I am not the bad guy. And I'm like, that's it. That's it. Yeah, but I think maybe something from my point of view will be helpful. It's just I'm trying to figure out when the time is right for that, and who needs to die first.
Do you think that for all the families that are out there struggling with addiction from one family member or another, do you think it's possible to heal and be happy?
I do, but it takes a lot of work. And the thing about it is you have to step away from your whole lifestyle, right? You have to step away from all the people that were in that lifestyle with you. That's what's really hard for young people, especially to try to get out of addiction. They don't love their friends, but their friends aren't going to change just because they want to change. So that, I think, is one of the hardest things for sure. But yes, they can, but they have to want to. Absolutely have to want to.
So that my next question is just kind of how, I look at your Instagram and, I see the success that you have, and I know that it's easier said than done, but, how did you do it? With all this stuff that you're surrounded with and that you write about, and especially your daughter, and, taking on, all the kids and their different issues and things like that. How do you do it?
It depends on the day. Some days I do it okay, some days not very well. I try to carve out windows of time, right? Like sleep, I'm up for sure. I'm up at 5 every morning. That's just the way I do it. And I get up and I take care of social media, I take care of email, and I try to write before everybody gets up. Or when school's going, like normally, they go out the door and then I have a block of time to write, right? So everything is up in the air right now. It's been hard. That's why I'm behind on this book that I have to get to my editor and tell her. She's like, so when am I going to see the new book? And I have to tell her, not tomorrow. It's been tough. It's been tough in a number of ways. So it's been tough because there's a lot more pressure within the house. There's just a lot more people around, a lot more stuff to be done and to do. But it's also because, and other writers are struggling with this too. We don't know what 2021 is going to look like, right? So this, should I talk about social distancing? Like, here's a book with a younger brother trying to help his older brother who's starting to get in trouble. So there's a Little League element. I mean, is there going to be dugouts in Little League in a year? I don't know. Are kids going to be wearing masks on the school bus? I don't know. We don't know. So it's been tough trying to figure out how to move forward and put kids back into a regular space, and we're not sure if they're going to be there. So I did go to my editor fairly early, and I asked her, I'm like, so, and she's like, the goal is to return to normal, like what it was before this, right? So so if that all changes and we don't go back to like a normal lifestyle, then we can fix it in revision. That's what she says. Get the book written is what she means.
Of course, that's what they always are.
But it's been hard, and the focus, right? It's hard to focus sometimes, though. It's. Ugh. I think if November goes better, it would be helpful.
Yeah, amen, amen there. But we won't get into it. Don't worry, Abby. Uh, well, well, guys, we're actually at the end of our time, and the hour went by really, really fast. Ellen, it's been fantastic talking to you. Abby, if you're out there anywhere, somewhere in the behind the scenes, thank you so much for keeping this running so smoothly tonight. And to everyone watching, and to my good friend Jennifer Rose here, thank you for being a part of the.
Love you, Jennifer Rose.
Thank you so much for being a part of this, the Herrick District Library's Summer Author Series. And with that, I think we're all set. Abby, if you want to do your magic behind the controls there.
I'll do my thing. I just wanted to put in my thanks again to you, Ellen, and also to you, Jen, for getting this ball rolling. I really credit you with getting this evening started. So this is your doing, babe. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ellen,
you.
thank you
and
for
thank you,
rolling
Ellen.
with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we can all go real time, let's do it for real.
Sounds great.
I will be there, front and center.
I'll stay in touch, I promise.
All right. Take
Have a
care.
good night, everybody.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye.